So I'm Nick D'Amato. I'm a information security consultant, but been in IT for about 10 years, a little more than 10 years now. And in that time, I've delivered dozens and dozens of projects, upwards of 30, from mobile device projects to endpoint projects, Active Directory deployments, cybersecurity projects. This is not exclusively cybersecurity oriented, but it is talking about project delivery and what I have done and found success in through time. Just to keep it technology agnostic, I use an example of baking brownies, so bear with me. But so, you know, when we talk about delivering a project and delivering it on time, delivering it successfully, there are a number of roadblocks that we run into. You're going to have misaligned expectations with the business. You're going to have a lack of expertise with the technology. You're going to have short timelines or rushed timelines that are going to cause problems for you. There are going to be cost inflations, whether that's time or money or impact to your users. Those are all costs to keep in mind when you're talking with your leadership and when you're setting those expectations with your management. The last thing we have a challenge with in every IT infrastructure, every environment, is getting manager buy-in on a project or on an implementation or a schedule. But this is kind of the story I want to tell. So somebody from the business goes out to a conference, or they go out to they meet with a partner or a vendor, and they hear about these wonderful brownies they want to get, right? Now they come back and say, we want brownies, right? So talk to the architect's like, I got you, fam. We got some brownies. That's great, that's awesome, right? Except that that's a souffle, not brownies. They don't know that, they were told it was brownies. So we're starting off with a expectations mismatch, right? And I had a customer, internal customer, come to me one time and said they wanted DLP. They wanted it so bad. And then we started talking about its capabilities, and comes to find out that's not at all what they wanted. Not even close. They wanted VPN. They knew it was 3 letters, and that's all. So DLP all the way. They fought for it. They fought like hell. They made their business case, the whole thing. They made it through their management, under the name DLP. They came to us and they talked to us and we're like, okay, so what kind of rule sets are we looking for? What are we trying to do? And we're like probing, and it's totally missing. And I'm really struggling here. I'm like, this does not make sense. What you guys want? I said, can you tell me exactly what you want to do with this? Yeah, sure. We want to be able to get on our mobile devices and then remote back into our network so we can get on our EMR. And I was like, that's not DLP. That's not DLP at all. Like, but we sat in a talk and someone said DLP. That's not DLP. So that mismatch of expectations, that's important to try to identify early and kind of reset that expectations often. But once we have a plan, right, we got our brownie mix, we got our brownie box here, right? Everybody here, I'm sure, has cooked cookies or backed brownies from scratch from a box, right? And this is what happens, right? You open the box, you take the box, you throw it in the trash, you preheat the oven, wrong temperature, dig that box right back out of the trash can, correct the temperature. Now we're going to assume you have the eggs you need to make your brownies, because 9 times out of 10 you go to get the eggs out, they've been in there for 3 weeks, that's nasty, nobody wants that. Or you don't have enough that calls for 3, you only have 2. Can you downscale the mix? No, I don't want to do that. So you wind up going to the store with your oven still on the whole time. But all of that, I'm not going to read through that whole little infographic right there, but it all turns out that we waste so many steps and so much time because we're excited to play with our technology. We're excited to mount that new firewall. We're excited to get something deployed or really show what it can do. And we skip over the basic steps that are going to make us successful. And so one of the things that causes this is inexperience, right? And I love this quote from Tina Fey. You know, politics and prostitution would be the only jobs, really, that consider inexperience a virtue. I think that's perfect, right? So it's the little things that matter, right? The little things are vital. Oops, I'm going to skip over that slide. That's coming later. That was put in the wrong spot. Good choice. As we move through these things, right? So as we move through our progression, those steps, those digging the box out of the trash can, finding out we didn't have the eggs, also known as not submitting your enterprise change management request, or not engaging some member of some far-flung team that owns the switch closet, but you had no idea why facilities owns that room, but it does. Those steps, those missteps, they cause delays and delays and delays. As you run into these problems, you start to burn through your time for implementation because Lord knows you can only have one fiscal year to implement a tool or implement a technology. And if you by chance do have more than one fiscal year because you work for the best company on the planet, then what's happening though is you set an expectation for this is our timeline, and you're missing your milestones, and it starts to wear and grind on your management, which will come in later. But when we talk about cost overruns that we were mentioning earlier, we've got time, right? So that's the time management, being on track, being on time, being able to deliver this without burning through man hours, right? Because those are finite in your company, your organization. And you've got the cost of system performance, right? So you're going to stick another agent out there. You're going to a CASB, and it's going to be an agent, a fat agent on the client, or you're rolling out a DLP client to your endpoints, and it's sucking down battery life, it's slowing things down. All of a sudden, you've got that cost, and there's an expected cost, but we suck so bad at communicating how much this is going to cost, what the time is, what the actual dollar number it's going to be is. We're either way overestimating or way underestimating on all of these because we don't take the time up front to really evaluate what does a project schedule really look like? What does the actual dollar cost really look like? How much performance are our users going to feel? And so then we get into the dollars, right? The dollars and cents, and that's the one management cares the most about. How much is this going to cost me? And we'll talk about what that looks like down the road, but that's just another cost that we have to keep in mind if we're trying to juggle. Now we're getting to the management buy-in thing, right? So you've got the managers in your department, and they care, how much is this going to cost? You got the management in other departments that want to know how this is going to impact their users. You've got maybe some adjacent department that wants to know if they're going to be the ones that get to own DLP, which by all means, go for it. Security doesn't want that. We'll own the tool, you can own the business processes. You've got some managers coming after you for when's it going to be done? Why aren't we done yet? Right? And then we've got the managers from some other department that don't even know what the hell brownies are, right? They're just like, what are we doing here? What's this DLP? Well, I want DLP. Oh no, it's actually VPN you want, right? But when you're talking about all these things, it can get to be overwhelming, right? It's something that we all stress about, trying to make sure that we do it right, and we start to bite off more than we can chew. And so, you just got to remind yourself, when you're eating an elephant, you do it one bite at a time. You're not going to go out there and just suck the whole thing in, get the whole project done in one giant step. It's a bunch of very small tasks, very, very small tasks. And that's, again, this is this quote where it's the little things that are vital. The little things add up to make the big things happen, right? And it's a John Wooden quote that I was shared with recently, and it kind of resonated with me, so I wanted to share it today. What I do to keep focus on goals, what I have encouraged teammates to do, what I have encouraged people that work with me on projects to do, is to really focus on what you're trying to achieve. And we'll break each of these down in a minute. But why are we trying to do that? Why are we implementing this tool at all? I mean, what's the why here? Who are we doing this for? Who's our internal customer, or is it an external customer that we're doing this for? What does that look like? How do we get there? That's how can we do this? What's our roadmap look like? And by following through this kind of thought process, you can start to hone in on what that process is, what your roadmap looks like. So defining success, right? What is success for your company? What is success for your department? What's success for you, for your teammates, for all parties involved, for the customer? It's important to remember what that success looks like, because it's critical to talk to, this is what we have to do to achieve what we commonly accept as success for a project. Right? That might be time, that might be a million other things. Again, we'll dive into this a little further. But to kind of talk about what success looks like for me, it's about being proud of what I do, what I did, what the project was. I don't want to be a party to a project that I look at and go, this is the wrong solution. This is an implementation that's just kicking the can down the road a month, 6 months, a year, 5 years from now. We're going to have a much bigger problem because we want to make the situation better. I'm here to make my work life better. I'm here to make my work environment better. So that's critical for me. And then completion. I don't know about you guys, but I hate shelfware. Right? We've all been in that place where we go out and our company spends millions of dollars on ServiceNow. And we've got 2 modules activated. Or we go out and we buy DLP from Digital Guardian or from Symantec, or if you're crazy, McAfee. And you have
You have their product, and you start to get into it, and you're like, hey, this is how it's going to go, we're going to do great, we're awesome. And then the cost, the time cost, the money cost, the effort cost, the system performance costs start to add up, and our managements are always coming at us and going, how can we make this faster? How can we not impact our users? And so what we do is we sacrifice success, and we cut back on one of the functionalities. Maybe we won't monitor email because we've got something else that kind of does that. Or maybe we won't monitor file and removable media because that stuff that's covered by our drive encryption software. And then we step back, and we step back, and we step back, and we wind up cutting it back to the bone, and we lose what we came to do, and we're not going to be successful. And that's critical because achieving success in security especially, is hard. It's a really hard thing, and the less often you achieve success, the more of a perpetual grind that the business looks at you. I've been on the other side of that and been like, dude, security sucks. They're always coming at us with changes, they're always coming at us with projects, and they're not getting them done. So, when we talk about, what are we trying to achieve? We need to focus on it from a number of different aspects. I focus on it from the information security objective I'm hoping to achieve here, right? Is it to reduce risk? And am I here to improve response time for an incident or a breach of some sort? Is it to replace ineffective technology? Sometimes you have a project that's just not like all super exciting new stuff. It's just we've got a ancient firewall we want to get rid of. We want to put something new and modern in. Sometimes it's we've evaluated our AV and it sucks, so it's time to go with something new. So when you see that, you have to evaluate that and kind of identify what's important to you, or what's important to the project, why you're doing it in the first place. So then, why are we implementing this specific technology? Right? Is it DLP? Is it a firewall? Whatever. Why are we implementing one of those components? So when we talk about it, is it compliance? Did our compliance department or our governance department come after us and say something? Was it for risk mitigation? Did the RMO say, hey, whoa, we looked at our top risks and this one's it. So let's put this new tool in to help us mitigate that. Was it about efficiencies, right? Are we trying to make our lives better, right? Are we putting a SIM in? So we're not combing through tons of logs from tons of different sources, trying to amalgamate a bunch of information out of this. That's one that we don't see a lot, but I definitely think that we need to talk about. Some of our projects are about making things better, not just reducing risk or being more compliant. How we need to talk about when we're asking why we're doing it. How does this help our customers? Is it helping our internal customers? Like, X department needs this, or Y department needs this. Is this for our external customers? Do we have PHI? Do we have PCI? And we are working on a way to control how that information is flowing around our environment or outside of our environment to a cloud or CASB or any number of other controls. And then what are we doing this for, right? Like what's the purpose? Is this because management has decided that this is the new hot, the new hot toy, the new shiny thing that everyone's doing? Everyone's going with.
Hey Nick, sorry to interrupt everyone, but you want to see Matt Shearer's talk? He kind of got shit. So if you want to see his
Actually,
talk,
Mitch, come here.
What?
You're disrupting his talk. Come here for a second.
What?
I'm actually moving much faster than expected and started early, so if you guys are interested in this talk, that may work out. But to continue, are we doing this because management's excited by the sparkly thing that they went to a conference and saw, or did they go out and do some vendor-led training, or was there a lunch and learn that they got to see something and oh yeah, that's what I want? Is it because legal came after you guys and said, hey, we're breaking some law or we're exposing ourselves to some kind of litigation. We need to take some countermeasure for that. Does Mitch need to make an announcement? It's okay.
No, we're good.
Good. Is it our governance or risk compliance, whatever department you want to talk about? I fill this in with an example, but think about who you're doing this for. Is what department, what group of people is asking for this, but also who's benefiting from it, right? And then, are we doing this for us? Is this for our team? Are we implementing a new technology that's going to let us focus on empowering our users, or is it going to let us focus on driving security forward in the organization, evangelizing security in some regard?
So now how do we get there, right? Like that's the money ticket here, right? We've all been a part of a project, and there are good PMs, there are bad PMs, they're sometimes helpful. But what we're trying to do is bridge that expertise gap, right? Like I know a lot about certain technologies, I know a little about other technologies. If I'm the guy for what I know a little about, that's a problem, right? I can't implement it. There are people out there who have implemented, hundreds of different firewalls from different vendor types for a dozen different companies and can do it in their sleep, and that's awesome. But they don't know your company, so their expertise has at least some drawback if they haven't been there. One of my previous employers, the environment was so kludgy. Every step you took was 3 steps forward, 2, maybe 3 or 4 steps backwards, because you go after one thing, you talk to this guy, and you get everything going, and then you find out, oh, well, I didn't engage his management first, so I've got to go that way. And then they kick it back. I actually had a finance document approved for a project. This is great. This was awesome. Approved for the project, but I sent it to our division's leadership. They signed off, and then I sent it to accounting. It's got the signature needed from our team, right? And accounting sees it and is supposed to sign off on it and then give us the money for the project, right? And accounting loses their mind. How dare you sign this before we sign it? How can that happen? So they kick us back with a blank one with their signatures on it and say, go get your leadership signature. Okay, fine. Go to my leadership signature, get my leadership signature, and I find out, oh, that project's actually been cut. We reallocated those funds somewhere else. So that was an awesome experience that expertise in our environment would have told you accounting's going to lose their mind if you don't do them first. So that's just kind of the expertise gap. But right, we're talking about consultants here can help bridging that when it comes to technology. We can leverage other teams, right? If I had known that and I could engage accounting first, we would have avoided that headache, right? We can talk about training, whether that's internal training on processes with your PMO, whether that is training from a vendor on how to leverage their technology or implement their technology. Those are fundamental features that people overlook. But then again, you can go to your vendors that sold you the firewall, that sold you the advanced endpoint protection, that sold you DLP, what CASB, you name the technology. It could be ServiceNow. It doesn't really matter. But approaching them and saying, hey, what are the best practices around implementing your tool? They're usually going to try to charge you some kind of consulting fee. They may just do some pro bono, like, hey, here's some steps, here's the hot, sharp, and dangerous. Don't stick your hand in that bag of needles, because that'll really suck. But the next thing to do is identify your milestones. And we can talk about brownies, but I'm not going to go there. It's just really about identifying bite 1 for that elephant, bite 2 for that elephant, bite 3, all the way out to bite 100. Let the PM worry about the end of the project. Let them worry about a mile down the road. Focus on the next 100 yards. What do you need to be successful, right? We've talked about we're going to need to define success, right? So define success for yourself, for what's it look like at your company level, right? Does the company say, we just need DLP, we need to be compliant, it's a thing. So, just turn it on. I don't care how on it is, just get it going, right? Is that for an improved security feature at your company, right? They actually need to see the benefit of DLP. They need to see the reporting coming out of it and being able to speak to their company's compliance. Do they want to use that for education, for their end users? Is this for risk reduction, right? Are we talking about we have a risk where our users can inadvertently, because nobody ever intentionally leaks anything, but inadvertently send that email with their customer social security numbers, or with account numbers, or with financial records in a hidden Excel sheet. I mean, those cells get collapsed down and sometimes contain sensitive data, right? Is this about increasing your compliance? Is this about saying, well, we have a policy that says that you are or are not required to do something or allowed to do something? And when it comes to increasing compliance, sometimes it's a matter of putting a technical control in, sometimes it's a matter of putting a policy control in. But really, what does that success look like, right, at your company level? Now let's talk about what success looks like for you. Like I said before, is that on-time delivery? Is that for somebody who says, I've got to get this done in this window? That's how I see success in my projects. Is it completeness of the implementation? Again, not walking back functionality and saying, oh, well, I can turn this feature off and I can turn that feature off to achieve on-time delivery. Maybe one of those is more important to you than the other. Who knows, right? I'm not here to judge, although you're wrong if on-time delivery is more important than completeness. I kid. It's okay. You guys can. Hard crap. Okay. So, and then proud of what you worked on, right? So, like, are you able to say, yeah, I did that. That was me. I worked on that. That was my team. That was my peers. I was a part of that, and I contributed to that project in this way. That's the thing for me. Being able to say we did something and we did something right. Right? It's implemented and it's done correctly. Ideally on time, but I'd rather slide a month or 2 months and maybe a few $1,000s over budget to be able to deliver something that I can say I'm proud of, that the company is actually benefiting from. Because we know deep down inside that we've all implemented a tool or a software or hardware component somewhere in our career where we knew we're wasting money. Why are we doing it if we're not turning this feature on? Why are we doing it if we're not turning that feature on? What's the point, right? And that's the one that keeps me up. That's the one that eats at me. So that's the one I focus on. When you talk about using those questions, those things that we talked about, asking who, what, when, where, why, that series of questions, and talking about aligning with your customer and setting those expectations, this is how you can use that to set your roadmap, right? You set that expectation. You're not getting your souffle. Those of you who were late, we used the brownie souffle example. But you're not getting a souffle. You're getting a brownie. Like, that's what we planned. That's actually what you want. You don't want DLP. You said you wanted remote access. That's VPN. I know they're both 3 letters. I know that that's an easy thing to confuse for a non-technical person. But when you break it down for somebody exactly what they wanted, what they needed, maybe it's 85% of what they want, but 100% of what they need, then that's where that aligning with the customer comes from. And then when you answer those questions, who is this for? What are we doing? Why are we doing it? And how are we going to do it? Those step-by-step things. We really get to the point where we can start to define meaningful timelines. And what's important to remember here is meaningful timelines has a lot to do with, Parkinson's law, right? You can work will expand to fit the available time allotted to it. So you can say, I'm going to take a year to get something done, and it should be done in a month. But then it'll creep out, and it'll be a year. Case in point, this presentation that I worked on. I gave myself a lot of time, and then the latter half of that I put it together, and then the latter half of what was remaining I refined it, and then the latter half I refined it again, and so on and so forth, because I could. I allowed myself that time to do it. Now, I had a deadline today, obviously. It could be like, oh, well, I'm done tomorrow. That would have really sucked for everyone here. But then, from there, you need to take that information and evangelize success, even at greater cost. And we talked about costs being financial, right? It doesn't make sense to spend $100,000 to implement 20% of a tool that costs $100,000. Your company's spending their money on it. If you pay $100,000 for a tool and then only implement 20% of the functionality, what you have done is spend $500,000 on that tool. And you've wasted all of the people involved's time. And it's a waste, because you're going to come right back and you're going to do it all over again. And the business is going to get worn out, because they're going to say, well, we did DLP, and it was a terrible process, and the user executives sucked, and it was awful. And now you're telling me you want to turn on more rules, and that's going to be another year-long process, and then another year-long process? Sure. What we do requires constant maintenance and tuning and honing, refining. I get that. That's not a project. But implementing a tool halfway that ultimately will be implemented all the way, it just drives the costs up, as opposed to finishing the initiative and the first go. When reasonable, I understand that that's not always possible. But again, also evangelize for the added financial cost. Maybe you're going to have to go back to the well and say, hey, management, we're running over on costs. We needed to engage a consultant. We needed to spend more man hours than we initially expected. We were wrong, right? We didn't tell you this up front when we gave you our cost projections, and we were wrong. So going back to the well isn't an easy thing, but that's part of evangelizing what success looks like. Going to your management saying, we were wrong, however, we're going to get this tool implemented in a way that reduces risk in these 6 categories, because that's what was important to us. Or it allows us to remove this efficiency that's hanging us up, inefficiency that's hanging us up. We're able to get rid of this other obsolete technology. because we've taken this step. Because you've identified what is success to your company, to your business, to you yourself. You can speak to that. You can feel that passion and continue to drive for it. One thing I had forgotten to mention when I talked about meaningful timelines is that we have Parkinson's law, right? Everything, you're going to expand the amount of work to fit your time, but you're also going to have Murphy's law, right? Where anything that can go wrong, it probably will, and most certainly at the worst possible time. It's okay. That happens. Some timelines just get blown to smithereens. But if you don't set a meaningful timeline to start with, then every timeline will get blown to smithereens. And that just ends up with egg on your face. So now that we've talked about that, does anybody have any questions for me?
What's your spirit animal?
Bourbon is my spirit animal. Without a doubt. And I'll be hanging out with him tonight at 16-bit, so come join us.
My spirit animal, tequila, will come with you.
All right, here we go. Tequila and I get along all right, vodka not so much, so I won't be hanging out with the vodka people. I don't do that.
Actually, if we could, because we wanted to get Nick's talk tape, and then we also wanted to get Matt's talk tape. If you have any questions, if you guys